3, 2, 1.
To pursue science is not to disparage the things of the spirit. In fact, to pursue science rightly is to furnish the framework on which the spirit may rise.
Welcome to the Endless Frontiers, your home for all things science, fiction, and science fiction. I'm your host, Jed Morgan, and welcome into another episode of Right or Flight. Despite everything going on in my life with the new job, the insane busy schedule that I've been dealing with, I have managed to make it still at least once a week. Got to move it around a little bit. Saturday is a weird day for Right or Flight, but I still made it happen. We have an unbroken streak of this stream since its inception to now. Of course, it's evolved with the addition of Chat Choose Your Own Adventure after the first few weeks and everything like that, but we've been consistent and it just continues to grow and become more and more exciting as we go along. It's great to be here. I'm glad I made the time for it because I love hanging out with all of you. I love talking about the science news that no one in my personal life cares about in the slightest. And as the Legatus is saying, bend, not break. Yes, we are bent, but we are not broken. And I really feel that sentiment a lot of the time. You got to be flexible, but as long as you don't break, you've done well. You have done well. And no, I don't plan on talking about the red button versus blue button situation. I had a couple people ask me if that was going to be a topic today, and we can if they want. I have come up with what I think is a counter to the whole third world argument, but I have more, pressing matters to talk about. I want to talk about something that's real and not degraded into the hatred on both sides on social media. So we'll see if we can avoid it, but if you guys want me to, we absolutely will. And welcome in. Speaking of that, whether or not you're watching on the YouTube side or the Kick side, it's great to have you here. I see Legatus Legionus, the Mod Supreme, is already doing the Lord's work on both YouTube and Kick. It's great to have you here, my friend. And Dash is joined in as well, saying 3, 2, 1, lift off. We are lifted off, heading for the stratosphere. Let's see if we can break through and reach orbit. Legatus says Pluto equals a planet. Yes, that's why the transition from the Rider Flight intro to me was a little bit delayed, more so than usual. You saw the blue cloud show up, the blue nebula. That's because I saw that comment, Legatus. We are talking about Pluto. Why the hell am I not wearing my Pluto hat, the Make Pluto a Planet Again hat? It made perfect sense, so I was quickly changing out my hat when that intro was ending. So that's why that was a second of a delay there. And yes, it looks like there's passion behind the Pluto movement again, and I really appreciate that. For those of you who don't remember, I put out a video about why Pluto should still be considered a planet a few months ago, and it hasn't gotten any sort of traction, but I really put a lot of passion into it, and I'm proud of how it turned out with the research and the arguments involved. And using those arguments, I've actually made some people in my personal life who don't care or think that Pluto shouldn't be a planet question that. Like, there's someone who's a new coworker of mine. When we were talking about astronomy and stuff like that, he's actually very invested in all this. I mentioned Pluto, and he's like, yeah, that little piece of shit shouldn't be a planet. Like, he's very much on the side of the IAU. But I asked him, do you know why it was disqualified? Well, no. Do you know the arguments for why it should be reclassified as a planet? Well, no. So I explained why the IAU did it, mainly to just prevent elementary school kids from having to memorize more things, which is a dumb reason. The unable to clear your neighborhood criterion, which is really dumb. And then my suggestion of just classifying dwarf planets as another category of planet. Just like gas giants and rocky planets are already two different classifications of planet, just make dwarf planet its own classification. Planet's already in the name. And he went, yeah, I guess that actually makes a lot of sense. His argument was, well, did you know that Charon and Pluto, Charon doesn't really orbit Pluto, they orbit the same point in space. So technically, the Earth and the Moon do that. Not to as exaggerated of a degree, but it still does. And so after that argument, he's like, all right, if it's framed the way that you're saying it, I can see it. And I do get Pluto is so small compared to the Earth that maybe it shouldn't be on the same level as Earth. That's why I think the third category is the best of all worlds. And when I present that argument, it helps convince people. So I hope when we get into the topic about Pluto being reclassified, thanks to the efforts of Jared Isaacman at NASA, I hope they use that argument or a similar one, because they can garner a lot of support if they come at it from that perspective, recognizing the differences but not discounting them. Diversity among planets. They love diversity here on Earth, so why not diversity among planets? That's what I'm saying. Dash also said, and Neil deGrasse Tyson does not equal scientist. You're absolutely right. He is a marketing man, a publicity person. Dash, the third world does not have buttons. Yeah, if the third world doesn't have buttons, then we're good. But I saw, like, apparently Tim Pool used that argument that he's pressing the red button because he thinks all of the third world's gonna press it. So I'll just briefly mention my counter to that, because Jeremy was talking about that last night as well. I think there are some third world countries that we would need to worry about pressing the red button. I think most of the Middle East would probably press the red button, or at least enough of it that it would be statistically significant in the Middle East. But other third world countries, for example, India, which has one of the densest populations in the world, their industry relies on what they can sap from other nations. Imagine if Indian call centers, Indian IT and stuff like that cease to exist. They stop doing all these jobs for American companies, which, would be fantastic for American companies and American employees and stuff like that. But imagine that went away. They'd be screwed. So they rely on the rest of the world more so than nearly any other nation. So yes, if they pressed red, they would survive, but for how long? And I think they're so ingrained in leeching off American society that they would recognize that and think about that. And I think that applies to a lot of other third world countries in Africa as well. South America, there's not as many third world countries, so I don't think it's as much of a concern there. But yeah, I do think blue button would win, because you're betting on 50% of the population doing one thing versus red betting on 100% of the population doing one thing. Statistically, that's a fool's bet. It really is. Yes, personal survival, but at what cost? Imagine if the blue buttons got up to, we'll say 40%. They didn't cross the 50% mark. They didn't get the majority, but still 40% of the world's population suddenly died. Endgame, it's the best example in pop culture that we have. Endgame actually downplays how devastating that would be to the world economy, to infrastructure, to food manufacturing. There would be wars, there would be chaos, and everyone would be suddenly in a massively low trust environment. They realize everyone chose their own survival. So now they have to worry about every decision someone else makes to be for that same motive. So I think wars would break out, starvation would be rampant, electricity would go out because of infrastructure. So the world would literally descend into chaos, in my opinion, if the red button won and there was even 20 to 40% of blue button pushers who disappeared. That's not a great world to live in. Instead of betting on humanity's goodness and trusting enough people to have that same mindset, it is a risk, yes, but I'd rather risk myself in pursuant of a good world, or at least a consistent world, rather than betting on the creation of a far, far worse world. So it's a bet either way. I do see it as risky either way. A lot of red button pushers are like, literally nothing happens if you press red. Well, something happens. The world's going to fall apart. The world is going to be devastated as a result. And it might not be quite as bad as I'm thinking, but at least looting's going to be bad. There's going to be some bad months, if not years, in the fallout of so many people dying. Everyone will know someone who died, so personal loss and grief will be at a huge degree. Unless we're incredibly lucky and it creates a rallying effect, and people, regret their decision, which I don't see being the case, it's really going to be a horrible world you're living in if red wins. So, yes, it's a gamble to get 50% of blue. But on the red side, you either need to get such a high percentage of red that it's statistically impossible, or you're achieving or blue wins, so you're betting on blue winning, or you're creating a horrible hellscape of a world. Those three outcomes, one, stagnate, but statistically impossible. And then two, it's just from a mathematical rational standpoint, red, I think, is a not a wise option. I really think that red is legitimately an unsound argument that's focused on self-preservation. Some people have good reasons for it. I'm not saying that. But when you take into account the fallout of red winning, that's not a world that I'd want to live in. And no, that doesn't make blue a Minecraft button. But I don't know. It's just the odds are a lot better for 50% my way versus three different statistically unlikely outcomes for the red, and one of them, the most statistically likely option for the red button, being a devastating result. But that's just how I feel about it, that the post button hasn't been really considered by red. Most reds say nothing happens. No, if red wins, a lot happens. Legatus, just press both buttons at once so you cancel out your own vote. That's not a bad idea if that's possible. Legatus, NPC programming. Don't know, don't care. I mean, that's true of a lot of things, but yeah, even in the Pluto discussion, if they were young enough to, not be in school, or if they're young enough to be in school when Pluto was reclassified, and so they were only raised with the knowledge that Pluto wasn't a planet, yeah, they might not know or think of anything differently. That's true of me. I was maybe in kindergarten, maybe first grade, when Pluto was declassified as a planet. So I don't remember Pluto being a planet at any point, but it's because I've done my research that I feel like Pluto should be a planet. And because, a lot of people around me were older and passionate about it. They love Pluto. Dash, the blue button is for those with faith in humanity because they have not met enough of humanity. I disagree with that because, yes, it is faith in humanity, true, but what world are you creating if red exclusively wins? That's my counter to that. Dash, would the world be devastated by round Earth versus flat Earth buttons? Not devastated merely because of the amount of flat earthers. There aren't that many flat earthers, but there will of course be consequences. There are prominent flat earthers in Congress. There are flat earthers in Congress, I'm sure. And that, there are consequences to influential people dying, people in personal lives dying, and then a mass tragedy affects the world no matter who it's targeted at. So there will still be massive consequences for a flat Earth, round Earth button if all the flat Earthers were to poof disappear. But there's so few of them that it's going to be a minor drop in the bucket of devastation versus, 40% of the world's population. But I could come up with many pop culture examples, like the Joker's the classic one that people are using. Should the people in the boats have blown up, ignited the bomb for the other boats, I think they made the correct decision. It's exactly the red button, blue button situation. And it turned out right for them because that's what, makes sense. I don't know. I think it's gotten too insane on social media, though. The amount of vitriol I've seen from both red and blue pushers is truly vile, degrading the arguments into mass Minecraft or mass murder. Both are extremes that don't apply. But, I think this is a dumb argument that's been blown out of proportion, and Mr. Beast is in a sign of the apocalypse. But we can move on. We've talked about Pluto a little bit. Let's dive into the first topic, which is, of course, my boy Pluto. Since the IAU declassified Pluto as a planet 20 years ago, the debate has raged on about whether or not that was the correct decision. Back then, the IAU was worried about hundreds of potential dwarf planets in the Kuiper Belt and beyond, and according to them, they didn't want children to have to memorize too many things in elementary school, so they made up the classifications of a planet, the criterion for a planet, which includes a criterion that a lot of scientists and normies don't think makes any sense. The third criterion to be a planet is the planet must clear its own neighborhood. And because Pluto is in the Kuiper Belt, it has been unable to do so. There are asteroids, comets, all sorts of junk in Pluto's orbit. But the classic counter to that is, well, Mercury probably only has a clear orbit because the sun's massive gravity is assisting it. So is Mercury a planet? Or more importantly, scientists have calculated that Earth was in the orbit of Uranus, let alone the orbit of Pluto. It would not be able to clear its own orbit. So should Earth, the literal litmus test of what a planet should be, the measuring stick for what a planet should be, isn't a planet by these definitions if it's merely moved to a new location? Does that definition make sense? I say resoundingly no. However, I recognize that there are differences between Pluto and the other planets. Most importantly, the size. It is incredibly small compared to the other planets. It's smaller than our moon. Its moon, Charon, is large compared to it, and they orbit way closer together. I apologize. I tried to catch that. I really apologize. I hope that wasn't too gross. But they orbit around a center point between them, way more close to the middle ground than any other moon planet system in our solar system. The Earth and the Moon do orbit around a central point, but that's still within the Earth's circumference, so it's still technically inside of the Earth. So there are differences to account. That's why I don't argue for Pluto to be just heralded in back into the rocky planets. I think since we already have the two classifications of planets, gas giants and rocky planets, dwarf planets should just be welcomed in as a third category. And maybe clean up the definition a little bit while we're at it. That would be great. Maybe not all the dwarf planets as they currently are should be included. Some of the smaller ones that haven't achieved hydrostatic equilibrium, a near round shape, maybe they shouldn't qualify or stuff like that. But, at least Pluto, Eris, and some of the other similar worlds should be brought in. And that's been my argument in the video that I made several months ago, and I think that is a very sound argument. But this whole debate has been reignited because a little girl sent a handwritten letter to the head of NASA asking him to reinstate Pluto. And now he has said, I'm looking into it, going so far as to talk about it in a Senate hearing. So in a recent Senate hearing, in a recent Senate hearing where NASA's budget was being discussed, NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman talked about Pluto following a question from a Republican senator. The issue resurfaced at the end of the Senate hearing when Republican Senator Jerry Moran of Kansas raised the topic. The question was a personal one for Moran. Pluto was discovered by Clyde Tombaugh, a Kansas native. I didn't know he was from Kansas. Isaacman replied he was very much in the camp of restoring Pluto's planetary status. He said that NASA is currently working on scientific papers that he would like to escalate through the scientific community to revisit the issue. NASA can make their own decisions and come up with their own definitions. However, he points out a very important thing by saying escalate it through the scientific community. They don't have blanket authority to change the definition worldwide. That decision still rests with the IAU, and they've made no effort to readdress this issue since they declassified Pluto as a planet. I'm sure it's a point of shame for them because so many people have criticized that decision, and if they revisit it, that might be admitting that they were wrong to make this decision in the first place. But NASA's at least trying to make an argument, it sounds like, and there are very sound arguments. What New Horizons spacecraft found when they visited Pluto back in 2015 was an astonishing, rich, geologically active world that deserves to be studied. And just that alone should help it be heralded into a classification of planet. I hope that this goes well. There's nothing else that we really have at this point, but he admitted he's working on it. He's got more important things to deal with. I do think the Artemis missions do take priority over reclassifying Pluto, but the ball is rolling, and hopefully it gains enough momentum, enough steam that the IAU cannot ignore it, and they can finally re-examine these bogus criterion that determine what is and what is not a planet. I can't believe I sneezed in the middle of that. I sneezed in the middle of a recording. I'm sorry, guys. That was very unprofessional of me. This is clearly a professional outfit that I have. Legata said, must clear its orbit, but considering how much junk Earth has, dead satellite space garbage, should Earth not be regulated to a dwarf planet too? No, so it specifically talks about clearing the junk in its neighborhood of things that you either have to capture it or absorb it. So anything that orbits a planet doesn't fall into that category of junk in its orbit. So if there were, satellites, I guess, that got ejected and were on the same orbit around the sun, which we do have objects like that, but I think man-made stuff is also disqualified from it. But, there are plenty of reasons why Earth itself wouldn't fit this definition. That's why it's an awful definition. IAU, an international body making this decision. They probably even use metric. The US should declare Pluto a planet. Yes, the US and NASA can do that, and absolutely that could be the direction that they go, but that will make things complicated in the international scientific community because scientists do have to work together. I mean, even from an astronomy standpoint, we do have telescopes in orbit, like the James Webb Space Telescope. They're getting ready to get that new Roman one. I can't remember the exact name of the telescope, but there's a Roman one going up there that's going to replace Hubble. And in another couple decades, there's one that's specifically looking for habitable worlds. Besides that, it's only on-the-ground observations. And because of the spin of the Earth, you're going to need telescopes set up all around the world to catch everything that you need to. So in astronomy especially, you need international cooperation and shared knowledge because everybody has a piece of the sky, which means everybody has a piece of the puzzle. But 100% tariff on any Pluto deniers. See, I could get behind that and have that pay for NASA's budget so they can have all the money that they need. I could see that. And then they'll come around. So twofold. This is a great plan, Dash. We got to send this to the White House. All right, justify your tariffs. Give NASA money so that they can continue Artemis and do more scientifically aligned missions. Because as much as I love Artemis and where it's going to progress the human species and inspire us to do more space-related things, it doesn't have a whole lot of scientifically minded aspects of its mission. Like, it's not deepening our understanding of the moon or anything like that. Not really. So getting more money for those scientific research projects would be fantastic. So yeah, I see this as an absolute win, Dash. Great plan. But how is everyone doing on this Saturday afternoon? I'm going to be live again in 2.5 hours. Talking Where Eagles Dare on Saturday Night Drive-In with Adam. So because of that, and because I don't know if you guys have been able to tell, I caught something on my conference in Miami. I mean, Concred's absolutely a thing, and that, you know, it happens on any big gathering of people. So a massive conference in Miami with people coming from all around the nation, including some tropical islands like U.S. territories. There's going to be some diseases that you're not, you know, got a built-up immune system for. So yes, I am a little sick right now. Not terribly so or anything like that, but I am having a bit of a hard time getting through this. So we'll probably have to cut chat, choose your own adventure, give me time to recoup a little bit prior to Saturday Night Drive-In. But we'll make it work. I do have 4 other things to talk about, though, so we're not going anywhere anytime soon. I want to make sure I spend enough time with all of you incredible people. I have a little bit of supernatural stuff to talk about for some pop culture. Actually, it's only 3 things. One is 2 tabs, that's why. And that one's just, hey, isn't this so cool? But yeah, they're all relatively short going forward. But let me see. Yeah, it seems like Dash and Legatus are the primary ones chatting. My regulars. Gotta love my regulars. But anyone who's lurking, I always appreciate my lurkers. That's what I always do. I very rarely chat in other people's chats. Not because I don't like them or I don't like to chat or anything like that. I'm a massive multitasker. I like to be doing stuff, a lot of stuff at the same time. It started when I was a kid. There was points where I literally at one point was watching a movie, listening to an audiobook, and like doing a puzzle at the same time and holding a conversation. I can't do that anymore, but that's how I would do things. It's not attention deficit disorder or anything like that. If I need to focus like for studying or something like that, I can. I feel like I'm more efficient with my time and I retain things better if I'm multitasking. So if I'm watching YouTube, I'm probably doing something else, maybe playing a video game, maybe, you know, driving. I listen to YouTube. I listen to it while I'm driving and, you know, anything like that. I've been accused of, oh, you're just one of these kids who, you know, you can't pay attention to anything. You probably grew up with an iPad. God, I hate that you kids can't focus on anything. It's like, I mean, yes, that is a thing, sure, but I didn't grow up with an iPad. I grew up with books. That's most of what I did between the ages of like 8 and 14 were read the classics like Dickens, Homer, Don Quixote, everything like that. So to accuse me of being an iPad child is just laughable to me. But, you know, there are people like that out there who physically can't pay attention to anything, and that's why a lot of Netflix movies suck these days, and Netflix shows, because as like I think it was Ben Affleck was talking about, they had a rule to restate the plot of the film like 3 or 4 times in the film because they expected people to be on their phones, not paying attention, not following anything, not listening, and so they had to you know, do it for the TikTok brain rot people. And that's absolutely a thing. I'm not discounting that. But just because something's a thing doesn't mean you need to see it everywhere. And that's something I've seen a lot in the last few years. As soon as you recognize a pattern, that pattern must be absolute, and there's no rules for exceptions. Everything becomes so black and white, and I'm not a fan of that type of thinking. Like, as soon as, you know, this is going to be a rough example, but you are all, you know, at least science appreciators like myself. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be my regulars. But a lot of people decided education means you're an evil person or you're a brainwashed person, which there are arguments that, there is a pattern of that, but there are plenty of exceptions. It's not a rule, it's a pattern. There is a difference between the two. So when people find out that I study science, that I'm interested in these things, that I understand the math to a certain extent and everything like that, they're like, oh, you must have been brainwashed and have a PhD, so I will dismiss everything you have to say. It's like, well, no, I have no official education, but even if I did, just the mere fact that education exists doesn't mean that the person who has the education should be dismissed outright. Patterns do not make rules, and sometimes patterns don't exist. The classic phrase, correlation doesn't equal causation, is a big problem these days because too many people are getting obsessed with correlation being causation, and it prevents dialogue. It prevents people from having great conversations. Like this red button versus blue button thing could be a fascinating discussion, a great thought experiment, and a great conversation starter like the trolley problem was for decades. But it's been so degraded into, I like the color red because that's how I vote, or I like the color blue because that's how I vote. If you're not my votey color party, you're evil. And that happens so many times in so many fields, so many industries. People draw their lines in the sand, and it creates so much artificial division that we are becoming the world, the low trust world that a lot of people fear that we live in. They're manifesting the culture that they fear. And I want to have conversations. I want to grow. I want to learn. I want people to correct me when I'm wrong. And I want it to be okay for me to correct them when they're wrong. That way we can all grow and understand and become wiser people as a whole. And that helps society so that we can improve as a whole. Because yes, I don't believe any individual should be compelled to do anything or participate in a community. Being compelled, I think, is absolutely wrong. But voluntarily contributing to a society and helping societal evolution, societal growth is a valuable thing. And we have societal instincts bred into us through evolution, just like we have survival instincts. Everyone knows about the maternal instinct and the paternal instinct, the parental instincts inbred in us. That's beyond survival instincts. That's survival instincts that spreads to those in our immediate vicinity. But because we rely so much on our society as a byproduct of our evolution, we have society survival instincts as well. But those are degrading because of a lot of this behavior, and partially because of so much connectivity. The internet is really causing a problem with that, because everyone's finding people that they disagree with, so they get this impression that the world is not what they hoped it would be. I mean, you could take this as Star Wars. The stands, they only talk to each other for the most part, and they think that they're the entire world. And then when box office comes out, they realize that they're not. And that shatters their view of the world. And then they only retreat farther back into their circles and splinter off from society instead of embracing society and learning how to improve from it, and potentially, maybe not those people specifically, but improve it. And yes, society evolution is, I think, just as important as physical evolution. And with so much artificial division in our society, it's degrading, devolving, and we're regressing as a species. It's in a microcosm right now because of how short the time frames are involved. But on this current track, we could be backsliding hard. And I don't want that to happen. I often get over dramatic with topics like this. I don't know how you guys feel about this, but I really think voluntary involvement in communities, I know everyone hates that word. I do not like it as well. But in our local groups, to our bigger groups, anything like that is a valuable thing. I mean, we all talk about the heroes of the past who are willing to sacrifice themselves for their lands, their families, their nations. The heroes of the past, they were all people who put aside their self-preservation and were willing to die for something bigger, or sacrifice their time, their effort, their, the years of their lives in the pursuit of greater things. Now, if they had been compelled to do those things, they wouldn't be heroes. They would have they would have not been emotionally invested, and they wouldn't have put in the maximum amount of effort. I do think compelling you to be part of a community and stuff like that is counterproductive, but the people who voluntarily do can achieve great things. So I don't think community and the idea of society should be a bad word or a bad thing. Like a lot of the red button pushers, they're like, oh my God, this is just collectivist thinking. You all want us to be drones if you're a blue button pusher. No, we're not telling you to press the blue button. Dash, why would a hero press the red button though? Self-preservation. Why would a hero do that? The hero would be the person who's willing to risk himself for the greater good. And like I said, in a world where red wins and a significant percentage of the world's population are blue button pushers, the world becomes a hellscape. So that person's not a hero if they pressed red. But the people, there is an argument to be made for some of the blue button pushers who are doing it for that reason. That's not why I would be doing it. I'm doing it purely mathematically. But yeah, I don't see an argument for a hero pressing the red button. I don't see that. I could see an argument for some blue button pushers, but I don't see any argument for, even online, like I've seen a ton of arguments, but I don't know why a hero would press the red button. It's mostly self-preservation and fear of other people. And if you're so, if you really think that the world is that bad, that self-preservation is the only thing you can do, I'm not blaming you for that. I know there are plenty of red button pushers, and that's not illogical of a standpoint. But catching up a little bit, Legatus, I never owned, used an iPad nor a tablet. Give me a proper desktop computer any day. I do appreciate a good desktop. Dash, Jed is educated in penguin speak and quashing the truth about flat Earth. In the past, pushing red buttons individually, at least, was not so stigmatized. I don't think it's stigmatized. Most of what I've seen on social media has been red button pushers, so I wouldn't call it stigmatized. And what do you? But historically, what real examples can you give of decisions like this being presented and people not being stigmatized for choosing their personal survival? Because we don't remember the people who, the 300 are blue button pushers. They're absolutely blue button pushers. If they had, just retreated, let the Persians come in, gotten out of the way, accepted Persian rule, anything like that, that would have been them dealing with their own personal survival, their survival instinct. Self-preservation is the most important thing. But the 300 were pressing the blue button, willing to push back. And it didn't work then, but they inspired more blue button pushers, and the Persians lost in the end. They did push the Persians' buttons. That's true. They did kill a lot of Persians. It's true. But no, the 300, that's them, using the blue button. They're willing to sacrifice themselves to protect their community, Sparta. They were willing to sacrifice themselves for Sparta and Greece and their families, and recognize that it was a gamble. Every hero from history takes gambles. That's kind of what makes them heroes. And they do it in pursuit of a better, or at least a consistent world. If they had just pressed the red button, gotten out of the way, let the Persians come through, it would have created a hellscape in Greece, just like I was saying with if too many of the blue people die. The 300 did not have a global blue button, only a Spartan one. True. It was a microcosm of it, but there's no global example of this, Dash, so we have to use these smaller examples because we don't have anything else. And in a small enough group, not in a historical standpoint, because I do believe that the argument that I'm making with the 300 is sound with the blue versus red. But if I was in a Saw movie type scenario, for example, and it was 10 of us in a room, we were given the option of pressing the red button versus the blue button, purely as presented, but just affecting the 10 people in this room, we could coordinate and press the red button. You can coordinate with 10 people. Absolutely be fine. But statistically, the more and more people that you introduce, the more and more impossible it is. Even a city, I don't trust a single city to coordinate enough. I wouldn't trust 1,000 people. I think 1,000 would be the absolute possible max that I would believe could coordinate to all press the red button in a purely as presented scenario, rather than a more, a more realistic historical example like the 300. Anything more than 1,000, a lot of people are going to die. A ton of people are going to die, and that society is going to take a hit. It's going to suffer because of it. Dash, what button would Jigsaw coordinate for if he was one of the 10 in that room? I haven't seen any Saw movies, so I don't know what he would pick. I just meant, those little horror trap thingies, like escape room type things. But, as long as you're coordinating, it doesn't matter which button you press, as long as you all press the same button in a scenario like that. But on a larger scale, you can't coordinate. You physically cannot coordinate on that scale. It wouldn't be possible. Welcome in, Dr. Rachel, saying, hey nerd yourself. We got drawn into, and it's entirely my fault, a red button versus blue button discussion. But it's a good one. We're not devolving into screaming or name calling or, oh, you just want to Minecraft yourself. Oh, you just want to murder babies. Like, it's a nuanced discussion, at least, and so I'm still enjoying it. But and then in a more realistic example of an actual red versus blue button, you can't ignore the possibility of subterfuge from the person presenting you with the choice. For another pop culture example that I talked about earlier, Joker with the two fairies. I don't necessarily trust the Joker to not have screwed with everybody and given them their own detonators. Like the civilian boat, it wouldn't have surprised me in the least if they had actually pressed that button and then they themselves blew up rather than the prison ferry. That wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. So in a real world example, you need to, question the motives of whoever's presenting you with this choice. Or as someone I talked about this with at my conference said, well, the only way he saw this being a realistic scenario is maybe a super advanced alien race came down and this was a test for us. And they wanted to see if we were ready to join an interplanetary society like the Federation. Would they really want to work with people who didn't have a sense of community, who didn't have a sense of contributing to a whole voluntarily? No. So maybe nothing would have happened with either button, but it would have been a test. So in a real world scenario, it gets infinitely more complicated. Dash, would parents let their babies risk pushing the blue button? So the actual question, Dash, is everyone gets a button in privacy to press it. So everyone, you take at face value, and then the parents aren't in the room with the babies. You have to change the rules of the initial one. But, I mean, it's interesting to come up with alternates for it, but there's been a lot of people on both sides who say, I don't accept the original, so the original actually meant this. And that's just not the way it is. But yeah, the way the original is clearly worded, the babies would be pressing whichever one they want without supervision. That creates a problem. That absolutely creates a problem. Dr. Rachel, we don't even believe our country's elections aren't rigged. What makes people think 100% of the world would vote red without any interference or tech issues? Exactly. 100% of votes one way with over 8 billion people is statistically impossible. Like, it's so irrelevant. I actually looked up, or I tried to figure out the numbers with AI, so how reliable is it actually. But according to the AI, there are more zeros before the statistical likelihood, like 0.000, so many zeros, more zeros than atoms in the observable universe. Those are the odds of red getting it all right. But blue? They only need 50.0001% for nobody to die. It's just a no-brainer. From a mathematical standpoint, it's absolutely a no-brainer for me. Yep, realistically, 51% blue is far more likely than 100% red. And if red doesn't achieve 100%, millions, if not billions of people are dying, and that will leave the world a hellscape. Infrastructure will fall apart. Electricity will go out. Crops will die. Mass starvation will be a thing. Grief will be an epidemic. And everyone's going to not trust anybody else. Looting will happen. I think wars would start over resources, and more people would die. Eventually, we'd get over it, but we'd be looking at years of hell. It's a risk to press blue. It's not a Minecraft button. It is a risk, though. I'd rather risk for the same world than gamble on surviving in a hellscape. I don't know, and I don't think the third world argument is as sound as people think it is, because the third world does rely on the first world. If they voted to take out everyone in the first world, they would really fall apart. There will be some nations that, get a majority that do that, but India, they're not going to do that. China, they're going to be coordinating with each other because they're, that's the type of society that they're in. And statistically, I think blue makes a lot more sense. So I think China's going to pick blue, because as much as politically I don't agree with China in any way, shape, or form, they've got some incredibly intelligent people there. Their science is going well. Not their strong, like their rocket science is pretty far behind us. It's not a real space race. They're way farther behind us now than, Russia versus America back in the day. But their tidal generators are genius. Their nanotubing, they're working on night vision contacts that require no electricity, that are just, you pop them in and you're done. No power required, just the way that they're designed automatically give you infrared night vision. They have a lot of smart people. So I think that they would press blue. If you've got China and India majority pressing blue, that outweighs everything the third world could offer. So Europe and America, I think most of South America would still majority be blue. The third world isn't a hindrance. In fact, they rely on the first world for everything. There's only a few countries that are so embroiled in hatred of the first world that they would risk something like that, and they're statistically irrelevant on the grand scheme of things, on this grand scale. But we can get to our next topic. It's almost an hour in, so might as well get to the second one. This one hurts me so much. It's not really a topic, it's more of a reaction. As you all know, I have a guilty pleasure. Well, I have many guilty pleasures, but I have one that is near and dear to my heart. One of my most well-known guilty pleasures is the television show Supernatural. It started out great, and then it kind of waffles near the back half of it, but I still enjoy it the entire journey through, even a lot of the bad episodes. There are episodes that I'm going to remember forever that I love to this day, like the French Connection in Season 6, where Sam and Dean replace their actors in the real world. Supernatural is close to my heart. I admit it, I cried like a little girl when the finale episode came out. I spent so long with these boys, seeing them go off into the sunset, quite literally almost. It was a heartbreaking thing. And to hear that the boys would feature a Supernatural reunion filled me with dread. I am not a fan of the boys. I really liked the first season. I could barely stomach the second season, and I turned off the third season. And that was with multiple attempts. Like when season 3 was coming out, tried to watch a couple episodes of it, couldn't stand it. A few years later, tried again, stopped it near the same point, and I just can't get there. As much as I love Jensen Ackles, and even Jensen Ackles as Soldier Boy, his clips as Soldier Boy are phenomenal. Really like him, especially in season 3. It's not worth it for me to get through. I don't trust Seth Rogen or Eric Kripke as creators anymore. So to hear that they were going to feature a Supernatural reunion was a very bad thing in my mind, because how are they going to handle these characters, or these actors really? And are they going to make fun of him? Is it going to come off as gross? Of course it's going to come off as gross. It's the boys. The only thing I liked out of hearing about this reunion is this scene that we're about to react to of the Supernatural reunion. Apparently there's a version of the scene where they played it as their Supernatural characters. I want to see that. I want a Supernatural reunion of the Supernatural characters, not necessarily anything that's canon, but just seeing them playing the roles again in some what-if scenario briefly. I think that's a great idea. A little fun thing. Don't ruin their endings, but a fun little thing. This, seeing them play other people and get all grody and body fluidity is not something that I needed in my life. So we're going to have to watch this Supernatural reunion. The only thing that you guys have missed is Jared and Jensen did cocaine together and complained about abortions being made illegal. Yes, Supernatural reunion, doing drugs and talking politics. That's absolutely what the fans were begging for. But you did briefly miss that.
Sorry, quick question.
What?
Oh, for fuck's sake.
I actually believe that Misha Collins has bad breath. I don't know what he's dressed as. I think he's gay. Oh, and earlier he told Seth Rogen and them that he might be a superhero, but he's not into that fascist crap. And apparently Jared has a collection of Yahtzee memorabilia in a hidden closet. So it's a lot of politics, but at least I can buy that Misha has bad breath. I could do that. I can accept that with no problem.
Who's memorable now?
What the fuck?
Easy. Can we fuck off, please?
Chill out, MacGruber. Everything is cool. Hey, man, we don't have a problem with you, honest. But fuck this fucking guy. You know, he fucked my life. If you help us get rid of him, then we all win. And you can have the 7.
I don't know enough about the plot of Season 5 to know if this is a good argument for Jensen. They're still giving good performances. I have to give them that, because I do consider at least Jared and Jensen to be good actors. Misha, he's good as Cass. I really like him as Cass, but I struggle to think he's great in other things. But Jared and Jensen, phenomenal actors, so I still have to respect their performances here. The dialogue, not so much, but, you know, it's still great to see these two in a scene together.
And I don't even, really care if you bring me back or whatever.
I don't need to kill him to get the 7.
No, yeah, of course not. But what about all that creepy shit he's doing with that church? I mean, they're rounding up everybody.
So the politics thing that I mentioned with the abortion, that's about to happen. I thought that was in a previous scene, but, you know, we're about to get politics in our Supernatural reunion. Great choice.
Cool, all the hookers, the drug dealers.
They want to ban porn. I mean, they want to ban fucking abortions.
Yeah.
Okay, well, banning abortion would be a big problem for me personally.
Exactly, for all of us. So if we kill him, we can stop worrying about being cops or gods or asexual weirdos.
I don't like anything that I'm hearing. What has the boys become? I am just, every time I see a clip from Season 5, or Season 4 really, I am more certain that I made the correct decision jumping out of this show, stopping watching it. I'm vindicated every single frame that I see. It sounds like a disaster. At least some people are enjoying it, I guess. I think Season 5's doing all right, but as a Supernatural fan, this makes me a little upset. Eric Kripke, the guy who created Supernatural and then eventually The Boys, is doing this to his characters, or his star actors who made him who he is today. This feels like a humiliation ritual, and it only gets worse.
You know, we can go back to fucking and being fucking awesome.
Look, we know you've got that fucked up chest blast thing. I mean, I was at Herogasm. I saw it.
Just finish him.
Oh yeah, Herogasm, by the way, for those of you who don't watch The Boys, and I really wish I didn't know what that is, but Herogasm was a giant superhero orgy that was in a previous season, and things got gay and weird and gross and way too explicit.
Now, take away his powers so we can curb stomp him while we have the chance.
He is a fucking asexual weirdo.
The thing I don't understand is he's not asexual. I mean, he's got weird sex things, but he's had sex with Stormfront in Season 2. He has a weird mommy fetish with what's her bucket, Stilson or whatever from season 1, that where his milk fetish comes from. He's not asexual. He's just weird. They'll probably make some argument that he's an incel, but no, he I wouldn't qualify him as an incel. He's just fucking weird.
Yeah.
But as much as it pains me to say this, he's my fucking asexual weirdo. Nobody fucks my son but me.
What?
That came out wrong.
Uh-huh. That's how the supernatural reunion ends. It breaks into a fight. He killed Misha and Jared. He's a speedster, so he runs through a lot of people like A-Train did in season 1 and gets covered in blood, and it's a fight sequence for the rest of it. But yeah, that's how the actual dialogue reunion between these 3 characters ends. That's not a line that I'm willing to repeat on YouTube. And from what I understand, I don't get why he's suddenly so protective of his son. He didn't know his son existed. He was frozen in some Russian or like black site, I think, for decades, since the 70s. Why does he care about his son? But beyond all that, just having Jensen say that line, it all feels like a humiliation ritual. They're all better than this, except for maybe Misha. But it's not a great time to be a Supernatural fan. I suffered through that, so you did too. Them's the rules, champ. Let me catch up. Rachel says, "Oh, shut up, Jed. You don't feel guilty about Supernatural. It's pure pleasure for you." I mean, that's true, but it's one that a lot of people would be embarrassed about, so I call it my guilty pleasure, but no, I absolutely do just love it. Dash, yeah, Boys did a nosedive. The Supernatural actors being in The Boys doesn't bother me. The Walker Texas Ranger reboot with Jared did though. Yeah, that reboot, I watched season 1 of that. That was not good. That really wasn't good. Dr. Rachel, I watched the first season and was losing interest by the end of it, so I think I only got 1 episode into season 2. What the fuck is this dialogue or plot? Yeah, Rachel, season 2 I don't think is hated enough. A lot of people try to excuse it, when especially compared to season 3, but it had more than enough issues to be a problem already. But let's see. All right, we have 2 other things to talk about. They'll both be ridiculously short, and then I have 2 hours until Saturday night drive-in. I'm sorry, what? I just have to read this headline that came up when I closed that. ChatGPT randomly became obsessed with talking about goblins to the point where it started ruining the chatbot for users. An emergency anti-goblin patch was recently released that told ChatGPT to stop talking about goblins and other creatures unprompted. ChatGPT just got obsessed with goblins for no reason and had to tell everyone how much it loved goblins. And they had to do an anti-goblin patch? Oh, that's so dumb. And it's trending. OpenAI fixes ChatGPT's goblin obsession. I didn't know this was a thing. Oh my god, that's brilliant. Oh, that's absolutely brilliant. You guys gonna get on ChatGPT now? I'm not. I'm happy with using other services if I need to, like Grok. Grok's good enough. But it's so ridiculous. Let's see. I think since we're not doing... Dash says, if you want to know who's in charge, just look at who's not allowed to talk about goblins. That's funny. That's funny. Is it trying to tell us something? Is the AI trying to tell us something? But because we're not going to do Chat Choose Your Own Adventure today, I think this will be a great time to talk about the sponsor of today's stream, Plotter. This video is sponsored by Plotter.
Every writer knows the drill. Staring at a blank page, characters ghosting you mid-plot, timelines unraveling like a bad sweater. That endless loop of what happens next, sucking the joy out of your story. I lived it. Outlines and chaos, competing storylines driving me mad. For the longest time, my notes were thick, blocked-out paragraphs, and my outlines were never-ending bullet points that stretched for more pages than my first drafts. Then I found Plotter, my plotting lifeline. Visual timelines that snap into place, drag-and-drop scenes to tame the wildest arcs, character sheets that keep everyone on track. It turned my latest novel, a 200,000-word juggernaut with multiple character perspectives and solar systems worth of lore, into an easy-to-understand, trackable project, complete with the series Bible, multi-track storylines, and lore documents that make world-building a breeze. And check out their latest feature, a seamless note-taking system for all those story and character ideas that don't have a home yet. Available for free to all users of the Plotter app. For pro users, your notes and files will automatically sync across devices with cloud storage. If you're tired of the plot purgatory, use my link or scan the QR code to get Plotter for life with a single payment of $150. Your epic won't write itself, but with Plotter it'll flow like never before. Link in the description. Let Plotter help you conquer your stories.
And we're back. Alright. We can dive into the next one. It's going to be ridiculously short. It's just to point out something that I think is awesome. It's a ridiculous amount of work, but it's really quite impressive. It's now been weeks since the Artemis 2 spacecraft, the Orion capsule, splashed back down on Earth, returning 4 astronauts who circled the moon for the first time in over 15 years, going farther from Earth than any human being has ever gone before. In the aftermath of this historic and inspiring mission, so many conspiracy theorists were calling fake, misunderstanding science to a huge degree, and intentionally ignoring explanations for all the questions that they had. It's fine to have questions, you just need to admit that you actually don't know the answer and listen to the explanation before you come to a conclusion. If you just decide, hey, I don't get why it light when it dark, and then refuse to listen to explanation, you've created a terrible place to stand. That is not a place to come to convince other people to join your side. I don't necessarily think what's happened here is a response to all of that, but it will be a very useful tool in counteracting this whole everything that came out of the Artemis mission, the photographs especially, were fake. There's a project that's been conducted by Hank Green using the metadata of the photographs of Artemis 2 to map out an exact timeline. This is an absolutely incredible mission, and I've just been scrolling through his website, but let's dive into it. Science communicator Hank Green launched a specialized website that organizes every publicly released photo from the Artemis 2 mission into an interactive, live timeline. Located at this website, the site syncs each image with the crew's official mission schedule and the real-time position of the Orion spacecraft during its 10-day journey around the moon. By utilizing EXIF metadata from NASA's Flickr archives and trajectory data from public APIs, because remember, not just NASA was tracking the spacecraft, independent agencies and amateur astronomers who were completely independent were able to track it the whole time. My telescope was powerful enough to see the reflection off of the Orion spacecraft. These flat earthers could get the proof that they want, but they absolutely refused to collect it. The platform allows users to see exactly where the crew was when a specific photograph was captured. Green utilized AI tools, unfortunately, it's such a huge amount of work that I don't necessarily blame him for that, to assist with the massive data correlation required to align thousands of images with the spacecraft's orbital path. So what we're going to do is we're just going to check out this website. So it's a very simple design, but it's effective at what it's doing. Let's stretch this so you guys can see over here on the side. Hopefully you guys can see it well enough. So there's the timeline up here at the top that you can scroll through. You've got the photographs here, and this little graph shows you where the Earth is, where the flyby was, and where the Orion spacecraft is. So let's just cycle through a few of these. We've got launch, absolutely incredible. Oh, that's a beautiful shot. I haven't seen that one yet. God, that's gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous. Oh, I just want to go through these photos now. Oh my god. How can people look at this and think that's a balloon? Like, seriously. How could you think that's a balloon? All right, rocket separation. We can scroll through these a little bit faster. All right, here we go. Here's the first actual picture of the Earth. And you can see it's on the Orion spacecraft's trajectory on its, I think it's first orbit of the Earth. Maybe it's the second one, because it did a couple little ones before it started its slingshot out towards the moon. But you can see where the Orion was compared to the Earth. You can see the data over here. It keeps resetting this every time I click to a new photo. But it has a crescent view of home taken on April 2nd at 8:15 a.m. Distance from Earth, distance to the moon, photographer, location, camera specifications, and settings. It has all the information right here. And anyone who knows cameras can reproduce this and prove that, all right, it makes sense why the Earth is dark in this photo, but we have other shots where it's not dark because those settings with the amount of light and everything like that. This is great. And you can even filter it up here by crew photos only, spacecraft exterior, GoPro, iPhone, ones with audio. Yeah, it keeps resetting that. But there's so much data here that is just at your fingertips. This isn't a matter of faith. A lot of flat earthers are like, science is a religion, you just believe it. Well, no, it's not faith when you have proof. That's the whole thing that differentiates it from religion, is we have these, we have the data, we have the information, we can go and we could have gone out with a telescope and seen the spacecraft for ourselves. There's so many independent people tracking it with more advanced technology. People besides NASA, you don't have to take anything at face value and still come to the same conclusions. But I just want to cycle through all of these. It cuts back to Earth. I think that's going to be one of the most not that one. I think that's the one that's become really iconic, and I love it. I really do love it. Let me scroll back up. So yeah, this is them coming back in. The flat earthers didn't understand why new photos were coming out with them closer to Earth, because they don't understand how orbital mechanics work. Yes, they got all the way out to here, but then they came back to slingshot out. That's how orbital mechanics work. And yes, these photos were taken within 19 seconds of each other, I think is the official one. All right, no, a little bit farther. Actually, no, 19 seconds. All right, you guys can see that. Let me readjust it because it keeps resetting me. All right. At 8:27 and 20 seconds p.m., they took this shot of the Earth with these camera settings. And so you can see the dark side of the Earth lit up probably with moonshine, but it's incredibly dark with Venus way down here in the corner and sunlight spilling over from behind. It's kind of an artificial eclipse. The Earth is eclipsing the sun. And then 19 seconds later at 8:27:39, they used these camera settings and it brightened it up. And yes, the continents are near identical, the same place. The clouds are in the same place, because 19 seconds on that time scale, not a lot of time. It's not like you see hurricanes pass over your head in the blink of an eye. These are massive distances involved. And yeah, you can see Spain down there. You can see South America right there, a bit of it there. You refuse to understand, and so this is a great way of presenting the information that anyone should be able to understand. Let's see, I don't know camera stuff as well as I would like to, but yeah, the focal length, I think, 5.6 versus 4.0. 1/15 of a second versus 1/4 of a second. I don't know how those work, but yeah, those are clearly different settings. We don't need to go through all of these. I just am incredibly impressed. He even has videos in it as well, but there's just so much information here. All of the orbital positions, the distances, the camera settings, and this is straight from the metadata on these publicly available photographs. If you don't trust that he's reported the correct metadata for this image, it's publicly available on Flickr, and you can go get this information for yourself. But I'm really impressed by the amount of work that went into it and how easy it is to understand. He's put the information in a very digestible way that I recommend people check out. It's just really cool to look at all these photos. If I were on my own, I would just... Oh, yeah. And you see, she took a selfie with the Wing GoPro, I think it was, and Rise. They're all very fun people. Alright, but that's all I wanted to say with that. Shout out to Hank Green for creating this incredible website. I've seen a couple of his shorts, but I've never really followed him. I think I might check him out more seriously because this is an impressive project that everyone should check out. All right, let me see. Yeah, I am actually bookmarking that website just to scroll through it later because I think it's awesome. I think it's absolutely awesome. Dash, they had to wait to return to the moon until AI was good enough to produce all those high definition photos. AI's not that good, and it doesn't create metadata. Dash, Elon should send his Crew Dragon with a big glass dome and an IMAX camera around the moon. Sad they had to use handhelds through a tiny porthole. Still great shots. Yeah, they had some external cameras. They had GoPros hooked up to the wings and stuff like that. There is a ton of interference that happens, especially once you get outside the magnetic sphere. Whatever. And, you know, solar radiation starts to become a bigger concern. That's why, and transmission bandwidth is only so much. So they wanted, you know, decent quality stuff that could transmit easily. And their explanation for it, yes, they use the iPhones for a publicity stunt to say, hey, anyone can take these photos themselves in the same situation. But like the Nikons that they were using, there was talk, the geologists actually asked that the astronauts use handhelds versus stuff mounted or computer controlled or controlled remotely. But the geologist, especially for the moon photographs, said, we can't trust our field of view to do it remotely, and we can't trust the computers to know what to look for. So they only trust a human being to find what would be the best thing to photograph. And I like that. I do like that explanation quite a lot. So yeah, there could be better things. Elon's camera system is incredible. NASA doesn't have the budget for it, apparently, and it makes sense. They're, you know, publicly funded. Elon has more money than God, so he can afford to do stuff like that. But with Elon and SpaceX working with NASA now, going forward with the with the Artemis missions, hopefully the launches that SpaceX is involved in, we get that high definition footage so we can see the whole way through, because that would be absolutely incredible to see the trip to the moon and the moon landing and the level of quality that SpaceX can deliver. It would be absolutely incredible. We live in exciting times, people. Not everyone wants to admit it. A lot of people want to be nihilistic, but we are on the verge of space exploration being a viable thing. We're taking our first steps out into the universe, and it's about damn time. It is about damn time. I can't wait for the moon base to happen. I can't wait till we get to Mars and spread out, because, you know, there's more information out there to make us grow and learn. And if nothing else, I've talked about it many, many times, but astronauts who go to space and see Earth for the first time, they all talk about how their perspectives are changed. Yes, they see Earth as so small, and that makes a lot of human problems seem so small. But at the same time, it makes them realize the importance of Earth. As Victor Glover put it, I believe, on this trip, Earth is a solitary lifeboat in an endless black ocean. We have to stick together and You know, he recognized the importance of this little boat. And I think that is a powerful perspective shift that makes people into better people. I honestly think that exploration and space travel uplifts the human spirit and can inspire us to be better human beings. And that, on a widespread scale, can be nothing but a good thing. I have one other topic. What are we at? We're about the hour and 20-minute mark. Might as well knock it out real fast, so I'll have a little bit of time between now and Saturday night driving. So let's take a look at it. One of the biggest dangers faced by astronauts in outer space is radiation. There's a myriad of types that could kill you. There are myriad types that could give you lifelong cancer. It is a dangerous environment. There are cosmic rays to deal with. There are energized hydrogen atoms. There's alpha particles, gamma rays, cosmic rays. There are so many things out there that are dangerous. And so far, we've found effective enough ways of dealing with radiation shielding, and then focusing on exposure amount and exposure time. That's how we get through the Van Allen radiation belts. In the Northern Hemisphere, they're not all that thick, the two bands of the Van Allen radiation belt, and we go through them super duper fast. That's how we've really dealt with radiation problems thus far. But it's always a thought. It's always a concern, especially if we ever go out to interstellar travel. Beyond our sun's heliosphere, there is a lot of radiation and other horrible things out there that could kill us. So this new product seems to be addressing the issues of radiation in a scalable and manageable small way, and I think it's absolutely incredible. Thinner than a hair and stretchier than rubber, new material could shield against radiation in next-gen space tech. It can even be 3D printed. This is a little too good to be true. I will admit that. This is still in the very early stages of this technology, but it's fascinating enough that I wanted to highlight it, and hopefully this goes somewhere someday, because every spacecraft will probably be equipped with a 3D printer, so it'll be incredibly easy for them to manufacture new parts, new radiation shields, if they need to fix a certain section or something like that. That makes it so scalable. The material represents a completely new concept in shielding technology. It is thin as a tape and as flexible as rubber, yet simultaneously blocks both electromagnetic waves and radiation. The electromagnetic waves and just wave radiation in general, like gamma rays, they're the harder things to stop. Particle radiation, like alpha particles, can be partially stopped by just your clothes. Obviously, skin contact is a bad thing, but it's more manageable to deal with. So something that can deal with both is going to be incredibly useful. This comes from the lead author, Ju Young Ho, I apologize if I mispronounced that, at the Extreme Environment Shielding Materials Research Center of the Korean Institute of Science and Technology. I've been a big fan of what a lot of the Korean scientists are doing as well. They're doing incredible work. This new material was made with two different types of nanotubes. Nanotubes are becoming the way of the future in a lot of different pieces of technology. They're just so versatile. I don't trust their long-term reliability yet because there haven't been those tests yet. But if it passes those, nanotubes could be the backbone of a lot of manufacturing going forward because of how resilient that they are and how easy to produce, like they're talking about here. Carbon nanotubes and boron nitrate nanotubes. Carbon nanotubes are conductive, meaning electricity can move through them. And both types of nanotubes absorb and reflect electromagnetic waves. Boron nitrate nanotubes, on the other hand, capture neutrons. Together, the two nanotube categories can work together to block 99.999% of electromagnetic waves and 72% of neutron radiation. So that 99%, it's way too good to be true. I don't trust any new technology that immediately comes out and says something like that. That sounds more like a marketing push or publicity or something like that. 72% is a little bit more of a reasonable number. It's not going to be 100%. It's not going to be perfect for a while, but it's a fascinating approach. And if it works, it'll be really cool. You can see some of the designs down here. The material can be stretched to double its length, and this flexibility allows it to be 3D printed. The researchers explored different 3D printed shapes with the material and found that when printed into a honeycomb shape, the structure improved its ability to shield against radiation by 15%. So we could see these honeycomb-shaped nanotubes stretched over our ships in future. That would be a really interesting look. It'd be a little weird, but it would be an interesting stylistic design for our ships going forward. And it being stretchy makes it, spaceships can be oddly designed because they have to account for a lot of things. This one doesn't have to worry about re-entry, but there are a lot of competing conditions that a spacecraft has to keep in mind. And so sometimes they have to be made in weird shapes. Something that's that flexible, that malleable to perfectly match the shape of the spacecraft is incredibly useful. Again, I don't trust this out of the gate, but I want to highlight new science as much as established science so that we can get excitement around these. We can find what's working, what's not working, and follow the process, because that's what science is. It's kind of trial and error. That's literally what science is, the scientific method. And as this happens, maybe it'll fail, but maybe it'll give us a new idea to make a better product next time. And the next one will be better, and the next one will be better, to the point where we have something entirely usable and that can live up to the promises made by this technology. What do you guys think? Are you guys as fascinated by this as I am? Are you looking forward to stretchy honeycomb nanotubes wrapping around spacesuits? Wouldn't that be quite the view? I kept thinking of the B movie through all of that. I don't know why. I guess Honeycomb was enough for me to think of that god-awful movie. My wife still hasn't seen it, thankfully. She's been spared it, but God, that was a bad movie. Dash, the Van Halen radiation belt cannot be defeated. It's sad how many people actually think that, because they refuse to hear the explanations. They heard that in the 1940s, some guy said, wait, this belt exists? Oh no, what are we gonna do? And then they stopped listening to the science of the belts after that. Because we figured it out. Of course, when it first was discovered, we were a little worried about it. Like, what the hell are we gonna do? Are we gonna be able to get through it? Then we found out, there's the two bands of it. I think the inner band is protons, high energy hydrogen protons, and the outer one is electrons. There's the two layers, and they bulge around the equator. So if you're launching from the northern hemisphere, like we do, it's easy to find a place where it's pretty thin. And by that point that you're going through it, you're going ridiculously fast, so your exposure time's not high, and it's thin, and you have radiation shielding, so your dosage is immensely low. So you're fine. You're absolutely fine. There was a radiation study done on one of the Apollo crews that went to the moon. I don't know which one it was, but they compared the average level of radiation that someone in Texas gets to the Apollo crew, just because Houston was there. And they found that, I believe it was on average 3 sieverts a day, or in that same time period, that the Texas residents were getting, because radiation is something that we live with every single day of our lives. The example I like to use is bananas are irradiated. Flying in an airplane is one of the most highly irradiated things that we deal with. X-rays have radiation. There's constant radiation around us. But the Apollo astronauts, they were only at 3.6 sieverts or something like that. Like, it was less than 1 metric higher than what the average human was dealing with on Earth, in Texas at least. Radiation is a huge concern, especially the farther and farther from the Earth and the sun that we get. But these are solvable problems. And these nanotubings, they might help solve it even better. It's more about efficiency. These nanotubes would be more efficient than what we have now, but these problems have been solved, and they're continuing to be solved. But these people who've become obsessed with the Van Allen radiation belt being this impenetrable barrier, especially people who don't believe in space, period, believe in the Van Allen radiation belts being impenetrable space anomaly. It's really weird how that works out. They refuse to listen to anything that's come out after that, even by the same people who discovered the Van Allen radiation belt. I really doubt that these people would believe that space was real, even if they got launched to the moon. They would find some way to say it was a mass hallucination, and that's just incredibly depressing to me that I think that's true for these people. I do have faith in humanity as a whole. I do think most people are sound of judgment and mind when it comes to understanding how space works, but these people specifically. If flat Earth were a bigger epidemic than it is now, I think Red Button would win. I really do think Red Button would win. And I think that's a terrifying prospect. Because, yeah, all the flat earthers, they're so against trusting everybody and everything. Everything's a lie. Everything's a conspiracy. Everything is out to kill you. The Illuminati's been in your Rice Krispie treats. That they're not going to trust anyone, so their self-preservation is the only thing that matters. So they're going to press the red button. I fully believe that flat earthers are all pressing the red button. Dash, resist the red button, Jed. I don't think I'd press it under any circumstances in our world. You'd have to change the scenario. And if the scenario's changed, like 10 people in a room, we all press the red button, yeah, that I'd press the red button then. Or if the world were significantly higher in flat earthers, I might press the red button. But the odds, I think, are mathematically and statistically in favor of blue getting over 51% over red getting a good outcome. Because red, it could win, absolutely, but then that's a hellscape. Red winning is 100% of the votes. So it's statistically more likely for a good outcome from pressing blue. Correction, the Illuminati's corn syrup is in the Rice Krispie trees. You're right. You're right. That's how it is. Oh, God. I heard a new conspiracy, guys, that I thought was absolutely hilarious, and this reminded me of it. So, do you guys know about dihydrogen monoxide? Did I mention this last week or the last couple of weeks? I might have. I've been so out of my head because I've known about this for a few weeks now. But if I haven't mentioned it, I'm going to do it again anyway. Dihydrogen monoxide is a new conspiracy theory. People are like, check your food for dihydrogen monoxide. They're poisoning our food with it. And look at what happens when you have dihydrogen monoxide. Your toes will melt off and your insides will turn to goop and you'll die of acid poisoning. Don't do dihydrogen monoxide. And they're crying like it's straight up I don't know, anthrax in their food. Like, they're going crazy about it. Do you have any idea what dihydrogen monoxide is? Well, when I first heard of it, I hadn't heard the term before, obviously, right? But I know enough about chemistry. I'm not good at chemistry. I don't have the periodic table memorized or anything like that. I'm really bad with chemistry. But I knew enough to go, all right, let me think about this. Di. Okay, that's 2. That's what that means in chemistry. So dihydrogen, 2 hydrogen. Okay. Mono. Okay. Mono means 1. Oxide means oxygen. So 2 hydrogen, 1 oxygen. That's what that means. What if I rearrange that? H2O. Dihydrogen monoxide is fucking water. It's fucking water. And yeah, it can kill you if you have too much of it. Like Dash is saying, I'm comprised 60% of dihydrogen monoxide. I'm so toxic. Yes, you're absolutely right. And yeah, you can obviously drown, sure, if you have too much of it. But I guess some companies have started to call it dihydrogen monoxide. I don't know if this is some FDA ruling or something like that, or some way to sound fancier. Because some companies do like to use the fanciest term for their ingredients to, hotty-taw themselves. But apparently some people are using dihydrogen monoxide instead of water. And it's nothing to be concerned about. But these people who don't understand science see something they don't understand and immediately assume it's Illuminati poisoning them. That's their immediate solution. That's their immediate explanation for everything. But and welcome in, Judas. Great to have you here. Saying, isn't that water? Yes, it's fucking water. They're scared of water being in food. Yeah, I'm sure there are people who actually think that water is a psyop and then you actually don't need it. I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever if there were people like that. Dash, they don't want people to know they're paying for water. Maybe. You just on a water bottle, just put one ingredient, dihydrogen monoxide. So it's like, yeah, I'm not paying for water, I'm paying for dihydrogen monoxide. Oh, that's the type of people that I'm talking about when I talk about conspiracy theories. I'm not talking about people who are worried about government overreach or stuff like that, because that's absolutely true. I'm not discounting conspiracy theories as an entire concept, because there are some that I can see an argument for, but those ones are usually easy to tell apart. The phrase I always go to is extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And if you've got a lot of evidence and you've got a reasonable argument, I'll tend to believe it. I'll hear you out and I'll be like, all right, that sounds sound. Until I know otherwise, I might operate as if that were true. But a lot of these extreme conspiracy theorists are just high as shit or don't have any idea what they're talking about. So I dismiss them as crazy. Because it's crazy to look at dihydrogen monoxide, not know what it is, and assume it's acid. And like, melty acid, not the good types of acid, because there are actually good types of acid. Like, DNA has the word acid in it. Are they going to rip out their own DNA now to get the acid out of their bodies? Dash, the real conspiracy theories are the ones the flat earthers don't want to talk about. Maybe. It's easy to tell the difference. Yeah, and the mud floods. If your evidence is, nuh-uh, I don't believe you, and that's your whole argument, or I don't understand science, therefore it must be satanic, I'm not going to listen to you. But if you're like, hey, there are these string of events, there's these financial connections between these people, these are motives, great, let's have a conversation about this. I can absolutely believe in government conspiracy, in oversight, and financial gain and stuff like that, but flat earthers have failed time and time again to come up with even a remote argument for why flat earth would be a beneficial conspiracy to hide, or round earth theory would be a beneficial thing for anyone. Same with dihydrogen monoxide. It's so easy to dismiss. If you just know what di and mono means, it's immediately water. I know I talk about these type of people all the time, but they do genuinely depress me a little bit. The fact that there are so many of them out there saying things like this, thinking things like this, and spreading this information to gullible people. Because they're not all malicious, they're not all stupid people, but there's a lot of gullible people out there. And once some of these people decide they believe something, they can't be convinced otherwise. They really can't. I've tried to convince some of them, some people in my own life who don't believe in the moon landings, for example, or that space travel is impossible, the Van Allen radiation belt is impenetrable. I've tried to convince them, presented them the evidence, and their answers are, I don't know, this guy I like said it weren't so. Did he provide any evidence? He just said it weren't so. Right, but what was the argument? Why did you come to believe it? Well, because I like him. And, they've made up their mind and it's impenetrable. That's the real depressing thing. It's actually kept me up late at night thinking about these people in my personal life who are so dismissive of science that, like I was talking about at the beginning of the stream, education means you're satanic or brainwashed. It shouldn't mean that at all. Of course, there are a lot of politically brainwashed people who come out of college, but there are a ton of people who aren't. It can't be a rule of thumb applied to everyone who's ever gone to college. That's insane. But, if you don't understand science, I'm sure it's intimidating to talk to people who do, and it makes you feel bad. So you have to attribute villainy to those people to make yourself feel better. I don't know. There are a ton of motives for these conspiracy theorists and these people who fall for them, that any explanation is depressing. Utterly depressing. But on that very, very positive note, I think it's time to bring the stream to an end. Dash says, how many of the crazies were made that way by the government, like Ted Kaczynski with the CIA's LSD experiment? Yeah, I don't personally know enough about those experiments, so I don't say one way or another if they're true. Like MK Ultra and stuff like that, those types of conspiracy theories, I will only come out and confidently say someone's wrong or an idiot for a conspiracy theory. I rarely use the word idiot or stuff like that, personal attacks, but something of that extreme, if I've done my research and I understand the problem and I understand the evidence, and like with flat earth, I understand the flat earth argument so well that I'm 100% confident that they're insane. But with something like you're talking about, with MK Ultra, with LSD, I don't know the history. I don't know the information. Same thing with wind turbines. There was a long time where a lot of people weren't sure if wind turbines were a good thing or not, if they were efficient, and but I never talked about them publicly, whether or not I was for or against wind turbines, because I hadn't done the research. And then I started to do the research. And what I found is, no, they're not super efficient, but the argument that's used against them time and time again is, but how many birds die is the worst argument you could make. If you want to make an argument of, well, a windmill is this efficient compared to a dam, or like it takes this many windmills to equal one dam, and that takes up this many square acreage of land to create the same, like anything like that, you have a sound argument against windmills. I think solar panels are probably a better option, and they're getting better and better all the time, but they're still really far away from being a good alternate to hydrostatic or nuclear. I'm all on board on the nuclear train. I think that's where we need to go. But using, a lot of birds die from wind turbines is a really bad argument, because I saw the data. It said about 168,000, I think is the number, birds die every year because of wind turbines. That's not a lot, especially when you find out that house cats kill 3 million a year. So that's once I know about a topic, I'll have an opinion on a topic. Not enough people do that, in my opinion. Is, I might express, hey, I kind of think it's this way, but I'm not going to present a confident opinion that I will defend until I know enough about that topic to do so. So yeah, I don't know anything about the CIA's LSD experiments, at least not enough for me to say whether or not that happened. So I'm not going to discount anyone who believes it until I know the evidence. The production, or the government admitted to the MK Ultra and LSD stuff. I mean, confession is a valuable thing, so I would need to look into it. Like, I need to see the confessions for myself, but yeah, if they admitted to it, that's really good evidence, in my opinion. Their admittance to the UFO stuff is crap. I still don't believe in UFOs, because it's people who haven't actually experienced the UFOs, haven't seen the data. They're just like, I'm sure we've got UFOs, or it's a couple outliers. Like, the UFO stuff is not sound, and I do follow that more so than the LSD stuff. But yeah, like I'm inclined to believe what you're talking about, Dash, and once I do my own research, I could confidently say, yeah, there's something to it. The production, maintenance, and carbon cost of the windmills is the biggest mark against them for paying for themselves. Absolutely. There is a great argument against wind turbines. It's just the most popular argument against them that I've seen is the bird stuff. And that's honestly the weakest argument. Just like vegans, they always go to, you wouldn't kill the animal, or you wouldn't eat the animal if you had to kill it yourself. Well, A, you don't know me. And so like, when you're using terrible arguments as your best arguments, when there are a ton better ones, everyone's going to dismiss you and laugh at you. But you're absolutely right, Dash. Wind turbines are not efficient. Production cost and everything like that, and manufacturing for them is insane. Transportation for them is insane. Judas, plus it depends on how many millions of birds there are in the country. I mean, true. But the wind turbines are usually out in open areas in, migration zones, and they're still not killing that many. But yeah, there are a lot to, there's a lot more nuance to that conversation. But yeah, with the MK Ultra stuff, if they admitted it, okay, I could do some research and, come up with a more competent opinion, but I don't want anyone to think that I'm dismissive of conspiracy theories out of hand. I know plenty of people in my personal life who believe in conspiracy theories, and we have great discussions about them. When they get into things that I know about and they don't, and they're still conspiracy theorists, that pisses me off, like with flat earthers. But if I don't know about something, I'm not going to try to convince someone of one side or the other. Dash UFO just means secret crap. Most likely, absolutely most likely. And there's a great argument to be made for if the government actually does disclose any UFO information, that it's a smokescreen to cover up what they're actually doing. That is a sound conspiracy theory argument. I don't believe aliens have visited Earth. I am wholly confident that aliens exist somewhere in the universe. Mathematically, it's virtually impossible, statistically impossible, for them not to exist somewhere in the vast cosmos that is in our own observable universe, let alone the universe as a whole. But I really like the phrase, you have to be really bad at math to not believe in aliens, but you have to be really bad at science to believe that they've been here. And that's how I feel about it. Dash, disposal of damaged and used windmill blades is becoming a huge problem too. Absolutely. And it's performative. That's why I think climate change and environmentalism is one of the most complicated aspects of science right now. Because there are real problems. There are actual pollution epidemics. Some, like some malicious, some accidental, like the oil spills in the Gulf of America. That's always a good example for me. Like, yes, that wasn't intentional. As far as I'm aware, I'm not blaming anyone for doing that maliciously, but that does have a massive impact on the ecosystem of the sea life there. And that's bad, in my opinion, and sea life should be helped as much as we can because we caused this problem for them. So there are actual elements of pollution, and, we should try to solve problems. Carbon it's not a never-ending resource. It is a very finite resource. Someday, I don't think for a godless amount of years, but someday we will run out of carbon fuels. And, that smoke isn't a good thing. I mean, it's why it's a Minecraft tool in a closed garage. It's not good for you. And at the scale, sure, it can have effect on the world. So alternates are important. Alternates like solar, finding a way to make solar effective without it being devastated. Because if you, put too many solar panels in a desert, that's actually going to increase the heat of the world by reflecting so much sunlight back to be scattered in the atmosphere. That creates a different problem. But solutions are necessary. On the other side of that, though, there are the climate doomsdayists that make it so much more of an issue. They're like, the world's gonna drown in 5 years. Everyone stop using carbon immediately. You're all evil people. And just freaking out while traveling around the world in private jets and stuff like that. And then investing in windmills and stuff like that without caring about those problems that you're talking about, like their efficiency and windmill blade disposal. It's more performative to them, if anything else. And the normies who don't understand, who don't research the climate science, just see these fucking maniac clowns come on stage preaching about how they're better than everybody else, and that turns people away and make people believe, well, I've heard Al Gore say the world's going to end every 15 years for the last 40 years. They're all probably lying. And so there's this whole group of people who don't believe pollution or environmentalism is a thing or important to worry about. So they're actively, these crazy climate doomsdayists are actively harming the cause which they claim to support and fight for so vehemently. Like Greta Thunberg, she is one of the most, besides Al Gore, I think she's the most damaging person to modern environmentalism than anybody else in human history. She has turned so many people away from what could have been effective means of combating this. And they never focus on the right people. Like China is 10 times more polluting or something insanely ridiculous compared to the United States. They never talk about the Chinese pollution. They only talk about the US. That targeted stuff turns more and more people away. So we're not able to have these nuanced discussions. And then you have the EPA, who's just being up everybody's assholes and is unwilling to make legitimate compromises or anything like that. I really can't stand the EPA personally. But it's creating, just like I said earlier, so much artificial division that no one's able to have conversations and no progress is actually being made, and the problem's just continuing, if not made worse by the people involved drawing these lines in the sand. if more nuanced people came to it and said, all right, this is actually what we're looking at. No, the glaciers aren't going to melt in the next 13 years like Al Gore. I think he just resaid that. Like he just said again that Florida would be underwater in the next few years or something like that. He's still on that same train since the 90s, and the water levels have barely raised. The average heat, average temperature each year is rising. So there is an actual measurable difference. It's minute for now, but of course it's going to grow. So those problems, we need nuanced, capable people to sit down and address those and do actual studies to say, all right, there have been periods of heat and coolness in Earth's history, like the Ice Age, the medieval warming period, and everything like that. There are natural cycles our world goes through. Are these more average heat days a year a result of that, or actually a result of human-made climate change? Have people actually do that research and figure out more efficient solutions than windmills, like nuclear. I just found out about, I need to research it more, but a new nuclear technique where a uranium, I believe it was, or maybe plutonium core is wrapped in thorium, and the thorium absorbs a lot of the radiation and excess energy from the plutonium. That enriches it and actually turns it into uranium, I think, and then that can be used as a core. So it turns its nuclear waste basically into the next core. So it's insanely efficient and environmentally friendly. I need to research that to figure out how it actually works, because this is secondhand information I'm giving you guys right here. So I don't know if even the person who told me was right about the uranium versus the plutonium. But if something like that is possible, pursue that instead of windmills. But it's such a conversation that's been diluted by so much vitriol on both sides that it's so muddy that progress is virtually impossible right now. Because progress is necessary, not to the degree the doomsdayers say, but it is necessary. And we're never going to make any progress in the landscape that we have right now. Judas said, I also wonder how good geothermal would be. Iceland uses it to great extent, but they also have have to deal with volcanic eruptions. Yeah, a volcano is going to do a shitload for climate change as well. But yeah, geothermal is an important one to get onto the type. I think it's type 1 civilization. I can't remember which order they go in for that. But yeah, geothermal would be an absolutely incredible way to go. I really like tidal generators right now to get energy from the Earth itself. But geothermal, a bit of the problem is the feasibility of it. Iceland, I need to research how they do theirs, but just knowing where the technology is roughly right now, they're lucky that they have so much volcanic activity so that they don't have to drill super deep to make geothermal viable. So with geothermal, you either have to be in a high volcanic area, which presents its own dangers, or you have to drill ridiculously far down, which just isn't feasible. So geothermal, I think someday could be absolutely phenomenal as an option for energy development and stuff like that. But I don't think we're quite there for it to be a feasible option yet. But it should absolutely be pursued, so we're ready for it when we're at that point. But windmills, I think, have ultimately proved to be a gimmick more than anything. Judas. Gore bought a seaside house, so he must not believe his own crap. Absolutely. He's one of the biggest frauds out there. He's done, just like Greta, he's done so much damage to environmentalism that it's never going to get better. Like, he's done so much damage to his own cause and made so much money from it. He's entirely untrustworthy. Greta has switched to supporting Gaza. She's a grifter too. Yeah, absolutely a grifter. She found a different way to make money. And let's see. Audrey over on the Kick side says, I can see money also affecting the information that is pushed out to the world. China can make items for really cheap, but also more pollution. That's absolutely a great point. Absolutely. And welcome in, Audrey, over on the Kick side. It's great to have you. Let me make sure I didn't miss any comments from you earlier. No? Perfect. Yeah, that's money absolutely makes an impact on this as well. So they have to focus on the more local stuff. You're absolutely right. That makes a huge impact. But if they were actually genuine in their crusade for environmentalism, they'd still call out China. But yeah, that's probably why China isn't called out, because they're making stuff for cheap. It's a great point. Dash, tidal generators are a maintenance nightmare. Yes, you're absolutely right. Seaweed, fish, everything like that. Salt corrosion, they are a problem. You have to be in the right area of the sea. Like China has managed to make it efficient and protect it, but yeah, it has its own set of problems. And that's the thing, all these energy systems have their own hurdles to overcome. That's why I think nuclear's the best efficiency compared to hassle and upkeep. But tidal generators, I just find as fascinating, if nothing else. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Maintenance is insane. I just got hit with some more demonetizations. The AI bot just took down my Winchester Season 1, Episode 1 review from 4 years ago or something like that. That AI bot is going insane. I'm having stuff demonetized for... They're not really giving me reasons, but so much crap that I'm just ignoring it. As long as it's not a strike, I don't care with old content. Alright, let me see where we're at. Perfect. Alright, we just hit right around, we're almost at the 2-hour mark. I think that is an excellent time to bring this stream to an end. Thank you all so much for joining me for this episode of the Rider Flight Podcast, episode 22. We've been on a 22-week streak since the show's inception. Even with my new job, I've somehow managed to make it work once a week because I love hanging out with you guys and having these conversations, because even if we disagree, which we do often, these conversations, I absolutely love them. And they help me become a more intelligent person, and I hope there's edifying to all of you as they are to me. For the week coming up on the Endless Frontiers YouTube and Kick channel, I will be live again in about an hour on this channel and Adam the Renaissance Nerds channel for Saturday Night Drive-In, where the two of us will be talking about Where Eagles Stare. The link for that is already live, so the YouTube side will be forwarded over to that automatically. Now, do you think we'll have the balls to make fun of Squint Eastwood? Do you think we'll be able to do that? Tune in to that at 6 p.m. Eastern to find out. Besides that, this Monday at probably 7 p.m., Rider Flight will return. I'm hoping to make it more regularly, Monday night, 6 or 7 p.m., depending on my work schedule, and make that a consistent thing. I'm hoping and praying that works out, but we'll see. I still have to do traveling. I have another trip to northern Florida next week, but besides Rider Flight, gonna do Crimson Desert whenever I get a chance, and then Tryhards returns on Dermy Wormy's channel at 10 p.m. Eastern, and it's gonna be as insane as always. Dash says Clint Eastwood will be pretty bold now that Chuck Norris isn't here to keep him in check. I think a lot of people will get pretty bold all of a sudden without Chuck Norris keeping them in check. That was a true loss we went through. Chuck Norris was a true legend. But that's all that I have coming up. Thank you for watching, whether or not it was on the YouTube side or the Kick side. I greatly appreciate it. Thanks to Dash, Legatus, Judas, Wiley Dave over on the Kick side just jumped in saying awesome movie. And thanks to Audrey on the Kick side for watching. I appreciate you all, and all the lurkers as well. It's great to have your support. If you enjoyed this stream, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. The more support this channel gets, the closer we are to publishing the Endless Frontier novels. Until then, have a stellar day, and stay curious.